May 15th, 2021. Well, if you look at this show here, this is a sci-fi film that was recently released in 2021. There was a big nuclear war, and the skies are poisoned, and people were forced into domiciles for one person per domicile. For 9 years, they spent this time not speaking to another human being, but just using text. And they played video games, and they had to work a job. For instance, like being a front end loader, where they would scoop up dirt on a mine all day long and shove it into the machine so it could be processed. They had no physical contact with anybody else. They could only text. They could play video games. And they had no job opportunities other than the ones that were given to them. And if they did not do what they were told to do for compensation, they were fired. But nobody was fired because everybody agreed and complied to be in these domiciles, safe from the outside world. Then one night, a star came by, a meteorite, and knocked out the grid on one of the domiciles. And this young man walked out of it after 30 days when the batteries ran down and went out to the wilderness. There he found normal people living in the aftermath of the lie of a poisoned world of the outside atmosphere. Later he returned when he learned how to speak again and went to his mother's domicile, which they had been separated 9 years earlier. She was so unable to speak to him ever again, she even called the authorities on him, and a drone came by and checked him out. And he explicitly lied and said, my domicile, the power went out, and I left and I came to my mother's 9 years ago, which he did not. And then that was accepted. And so he went back to the domicile, and his mother finally let him through the door. She could not speak. She was playing video games, and she was smoking some special flower stuff. She was so isolated for so long, she forgot how to do human interaction. She became a drone herself, a robot, a slave to society, a slave to a corporation. Even though the air is perfectly fine outside, she refused to leave, and she did not speak ever again. He had to abandon her and go back to the people he found in the forest. Sound familiar? You can't leave your home. You need to wear a muzzle. You can only text family and friends. How many people speak on the phone nowadays? Unless you're talking to an elderly parent or an elderly sibling, they don't call on the phone, they text. So with this thing that's going around, people are being isolated in their own homes. They're being subject to, you don't need to work, we'll give you some free cash. And eventually, my follow-up from the last video, well, the free cash is drying up, so now you need to go find a job. What will that job be? Well, people reported that their jobs are no longer available, or they don't have the training for a job. And then it was politely suggested, well, you could spend all that money and retrain people and send them to a center to learn how to work in a job. But why would you do that when you can do everything on the internet? That was the missing point that I found on somebody's argument today on one of their videos, and I won't mention their name. How long before you become a prisoner? Remember the Olympics? What did they call that? The Stockholm Syndrome? How long before you become a victim of the Stockholm Syndrome? By listening to people that say, no, you can't go outside because you might catch this deadly thing. And you may result of harm from it. But then again, let's go ahead and take the unemployment benefits away so we can push people back in the workforce because we need them to get the thingy in the arm that you can stick a magnet to. How long before this society collapses into domiciles, to people being isolated from others? How can you have a herd immunity if you don't interact with other human beings? The future's up to you. The warnings that I am saying now is something you should realize. You've been warned.